Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Wolbrook Skindiver Automatic Diver's Watch 38mm. This watch is available from Wolbrook.com for €579. Wolbrook have a rich brand heritage. They were founded in 1949 in America. In the 1950s, Wolbrook and its sister brand Douglas produced watches in France. In the 1960s, Wolbrook released their most iconic piece, the Skindiver World Timer, which was famously worn by Neil Armstrong. Then in the 1970s quartz crisis, Wolbrook and its sister brand died out. And then in 2019, the brand came back to life. Wolbrook are also the parent company of HGP, and you'll know from my previous reviews I have reviewed several versions of the HGP Diver. So, firstly, let's look at the watch case that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a canvas and leather watch case, which is housed inside this outer box. As you can see on the front of the box, we have a sticker which says clean for service, maintain clean. This indicates that this piece has passed quality control inspection. So to clarify, Wolbrook watches are assembled in France, and their movements are regulated in France in-house, and also they pass quality control inspection in France. So you can see the similarity between the HGP watch case, watches I've previously reviewed, and this Wolbrook one. It's made from canvas and also has leather around the perimeter, flawless stitching around the perimeter. The leather strap secures the flap of the canvas flap, and as you can see, it has Wolbrook embossed and also the Wolbrook W in the circle emblem, which is stitched in contrasting black stitching. Well executed, well finished, good quality, and Wolbrook deserve credit here because they could have taken the less expensive default option of using a plastic or cardboard watch box, but this canvas and leather watch case is very aesthetically pleasing and good quality. With regards to items, one gets this card, and inside it shows the original advert from the 1960s for the most iconic Wolbrook piece, the Wolbrook Skindiver World Timer, which, as I've detailed, was famously worn by Neil Armstrong. And as you can see, it's nice to see that heritage. On the reverse, it has the designs of the various case backs of the different Skindiver models. So this one here with the fish is the clown trigger fish, and this is the case back which is used on this specific version, the Skindiver Automatic Diver's Watch 38mm. It's a limited edition of 949 pieces, and each of the unique 949 pieces have serial numbers which are numbered engraved into the case back. This is number 3 of 949. One also gets this card, which is the Certificate of Authenticity and Warranty card, and on the reverse it has the serial number of the piece, 003, date of purchase, the retailer, Wolbrook.com, and the specific reference number for the model of Skindiver. You can download the owner's instruction manual from Wolbrook.com, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and translated into a plethora of foreign languages as an alternative to a printed booklet, so that's good. And lastly, one also gets this card. This goes inside the watch case, and it sits between the bracelet and clasp and the case back, and it prevents the clasp rubbing against the case back and scuffing and scratching the laser etching on the case back. Also details on the front and the reverse. Instructions for how to remove the beads of rice bracelet with a quick release spring bars if you want to exchange it and fit a tropic strap. So to clarify, the watch is available in 2 versions. On the beads of rice bracelet shown, alternatively, if that's not your personal taste, they also offer it on a nitrile butadiene or NBR vintage rubber tropic style strap, which is very aesthetically pleasing. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 38mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 46mm, a thickness of 12.2mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The beads of rice bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push clasp. So, what we're looking at here is correct decision after correct decision, because we've got the perfection personified taper of 20 to 16, which is the perfect taper for a 38mm head of the piece. The bracelet is made by NSA, and you'll notice a similarity between this beads of rice bracelet and the beads of rice bracelet used on HGP divers that I've previously reviewed, because Wolbrook are also the parent company of NSA. So, to clarify, NSA originally made bracelets for a plethora of watch brands including Doxa, HGP, and also Hoya in the 1960s and 1970s, and then the brand died out. Wolbrook then relaunched the brand like they relaunched HGP and also Wolbrook itself. So they use NSA bracelets, and they have the vintage aesthetic of the original NSA bracelets made in Switzerland for a plethora of brands in the 1960s. So similar proportions to the HGP beads of rice bracelet, and as you can see, the difference is rather than having the NSA emblem, which is a circle and triangle, we have the W inside a circle, which is the Wolbrook brand emblem. 5 micro adjustment holes in the flanks, which is good because it's easy to get the perfect fit by pressing in a spring bar tool externally through the flanks, and this gives plenty of adjustment. I would like to see them add half links on the 6 and the 12 o'clock side of the beads of rice bracelet, because that would further perfect the fit, but in the absence of a micro adjustment or glide lock style mechanism, the 5 micro adjustment holes do suffice. We have a double domed sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and as you can see, it's boxed top hat style. So the original Skindivers from the 1960s used acrylic crystals, but of course sapphire crystal is harder and more scratch resistant. Also has the benefit of AR coating on the underside, which reduces the glare and the reflection, as you can see, of the silver mirror polished handset. So the clarity is excellent, legibility is excellent, and I like the profiling of it. Visually it does have the aesthetic of a 1960s acrylic crystal, but of course we have the benefit of it being harder and more scratch resistant. So as I've detailed, the original Skindiver World Timer had large Arabic numerals 12, 9, 6 and 3, but this one has a more contemporary dial design, rather like a Submariner style dial design. We have rectangle indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3 and circular dot indices at the other hour marks. Legibility is good, the clarity is good, and I like the quality of the printing. Large white minute ticks on the chapter ring, and also good attention to detail, because if you look close at 6 o'clock you can see they've printed France, because Wolbrook watches are assembled in France, and it's excellent. The quality of the printing is high definition and crisp. It's sharp, it's not thick and blurry. The Wolbrook text logo is clearly legible. Just the right amount of information on the dial, because we have Skindiver shock resistant 20 ATM / 200 meters. They haven't over branded the dial with unnecessary text or specification. They are right to put Skindiver because it is Wolbrook's most iconic piece. It's a heritage reissue of it, and they are right to put shock resistant because one of my favourite aspects of this piece is it uses hexaplex shock resistant architecture. So hexaplex means around the movement holder it has rubber shock absorbers, which are a 3D effect, and the rubber shock absorbers insulate the movement and the movement holder from shocks to the case. So effectively what that means is the movement inside the movement holder is insulated from the case by 3D shock absorbers. So for example, when the case suffers impact damage, the rubber 3D shock absorbers absorb the shock, and they prevent the shock being transmitted from the case through the movement holder into the movement, and therefore knocking out the regulation of the movement. So this is very good, the hexaplex shock resistant architecture. So on the dial they've printed shock resistant because it is highly shock resistant as a result. So let's look at the bezel in detail. The bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, and it is black PVD coated. And they've made a correct decision here because it's very hard for a brand like Wolbrook to create a heritage reissue piece, upgrade it or update it to modern day specification, to 2025 specification, but still retain the aesthetics of the original 1960s Skindivers. This one does it very well because the original bezel from the 1960s was made from Bakelite, which was like plastic, and of course that was prone to being scuffed and scratched. Bakelite was used in the 1950s and 1960s. It predated the use of stainless steel bezels and aluminium bezel inserts, for example, but this solid stainless steel bezel does give the aesthetic of a Bakelite bezel, but of course it's harder and more scratch resistant. The black PVD coating does look like Bakelite, it's got a nice matte finish to it, and of course PVD coating is durable and therefore it's suitable. The white minute ticks are clearly indexed, and it does visually remind me of a Rolex 5517 mil sub with the 60-minute ticks. I like the symmetry of it because we have the triangle, which is inlaid with BGW9 Superluminova, which we'll test in the Lume test, and then we've got the large 15, 30 and 45 Arabic numerals. Symmetry is good, legibility is good, large white minute ticks give good symmetry and balance to it, and I like the larger hour markers on the bezel. It's an example to other brands of how to get it correct. high definition engraving into the stainless steel, and then it's infilled with white paint to a good standard. It's sharp and crisp, it's not thick and blurry, and they've also done a very good job of inlaying the triangle with 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 as an alternative to a Lume pip. So low profile, coin edge bezel, and they've made the correct decision by using a coin edge bezel versus a gear tooth bezel, or alternatively scalloped bezel, which would look too aggressive for a Skindiver Heritage reissue, because coin edge bezels were used and they were low profile in the 1950s and 1960s. Another notable update or enhancement to modern day specification is the bezel mechanism. Originally in the 1950s and 1960s, Skindivers such as the Wolbrook and Douglas Skindivers had bidirectional friction bezels. They predated the use of clicking bezels. Then later in the 1980s, dive watches had unidirectional bezels with 60 clicks, and then contemporary standard is now 120 clicks that you'll all be familiar with. So this bezel is 120 clicks and it's unidirectional, so it is 2025 specification, although visually it looks like a 1960s Bakelite bezel, which would have been bidirectional and friction based. So let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, feels smooth, feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation, doesn't get lighter or heavier, so I like it. Medium resistance. To put it into perspective, it feels firmer than a Rolex Submariner date, such as my 16610, and it feels very smooth. I like the 120 clicks. Nice, loud, audible clicks. The sound of it is very satisfying. I like the sound of the clicks and also the feeling. One can feel the click spring engaging positively with each of the 120 grooves in the underside of the stainless steel bezel. So it feels solid. No lateral side-to-side play. No back play, nice and tight without being too tight, without having too much resistance. It feels lighter than a Steinhardt Ocean 139, which you may be familiar with. That has a very solid, a very heavy bezel execution. In terms of resistance, it feels similar to a Seiko 5KX. It's got that medium firm resistance, which is very satisfying. The balance is correct. It's not too heavy and it's not too light. Feels firm, no play in it, but smooth. So I really like the feeling of it, and I like the sound of it, and I like the lack of side-to-side lateral play and the lack of back play. Let's check the alignment. One more click. Perfect. The fully loomed triangle, which is loomed with BGW9, perfectly aligns with the 12 o'clock index and the 60-minute tick on the chaptering. This is an example to other mid-tier microbrands of how to get bezel execution perfected. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play, even resistance through the 360 degrees, medium firm resistance, perfect alignment. Bang on the centre, the triangle perfectly aligns with a 60-minute tick. It's 10 out of 10. One of the best bezel executions I've experienced at the mid-tier price point of €579. Let's test the screw-down crown execution. Coin edge, solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, and it's embossed with the Wolbrook W emblem, the W inside the circle. Matte finish to it, which complements the brushed satin finishing to the flanks and the top of the case. Correctly proportioned, it's not too large and it's not undersized, so you can get good purchase with your index finger and thumb, even wearing a glove or if your hand is wet. So it looks right in terms of proportion and size, but it's large enough to get a good grip of it. Let's test the execution. Silky smooth. This is sublime screw-down crown execution. Minimal number of turns required to fully unscrew it, and the interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube are perfect. Silky smooth. If I had to choose one word to describe it, I would say refinement. This is an example to other mid-tier microbrands of how to get it correct. So it feels smooth to unscrew. When it's unscrewed, we're now in the manual wind position, so one can manually wind the Miyota caliber 9039 to its maximum 42-hour power reserve. It feels nice and smooth to manually wind, so to put it into perspective, it feels smoother than manually winding a Sellita caliber SW200-1 or an ETA 2824-2. Doesn't feel rough or gritty. It feels similar to an SW200-1, but it feels slightly smoother, and I like the feeling of it. One can feel the tension gradually building up in the mainspring to its maximum 42 hours, so it feels pleasant. It doesn't feel rough or gritty to manually wind. I like the smoothness of it. The 9039, like the 9015, which it's based upon, are premium Miyota calibers. One can really feel that extra refinement in terms of materials, build quality, quality control, and finishing. They are higher grade than the 8000 series Miyota calibers, such as the 8215. So the 9039 is the no-date version of the 9015 respectively, but they have similar architecture. Feels good to manually wind. The benefit of this being the 9039 versus the 9015 is there is no date complication, and therefore there is no phantom date setting position. So pulling it out to the first click is the final click on the crown. We're now in the time setting position, and if you look at the contrasting white second hand with the contrasting red tip, you can see we've now hacked the movement. So it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with a caliber 9039. I like the handsets because they haven't just taken the default option of using a Mercedes handset as per a Submariner or Submariner date, and they've come up with their own original handset, which is very similar to the original Skindiver handset. We've got the large arrowhead tip for the hour hand and the pencil minute hand, and it works very well. One can clearly differentiate between the two immediately. Also, the white contrasting second hand is correctly proportioned because the red tip of it extends all the way to the large white minute tick. So legibility of this piece is 10 out of 10. Feels smooth both clockwise and anti-clockwise to set the time. Very refined. I like the gearing. One can feel the teeth meshing in the gearing. Feels far more refined and smooth than an NH38 and an NH35A respectively, which you'll all be familiar with. The gearing just feels tighter. Feels smooth, doesn't have friction, but you can feel the extra refinement of it being a 9000 premium grade of Miyota caliber. Minimal backplay. When you rotate the coin edge crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there's an almost immediate response to the pencil minute hand, and the handset is correctly proportioned. The tip of the triangle hour hand nearly extends to the printed indices, and the pencil minute hand extends all the way to the white minute tick, so they're the right length and the right proportion. I like the minimal backplay. Pushing it back in's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the contrasting white second hand with contrasting red tip. So feels good to set the time, feels good to hack the movement, feels good to manually wind it to its maximum 42 hours. Let's test screwing it back down. Instant thread pickup. This is a perfect interface, a perfect pickup between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. Refinement. Refinement to the bezel, refinement to the screw down crown. If I had to choose one word, it would be refinement. As I've detailed, what we're looking at with this piece is correct decision after correct decision, such as the bracelet, perfection personified 20 to 16 taper. So let's check the end links and the bracelet in detail. Beads of rice end links are solid and they articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink, but they don't have excess play, longitudinal, lateral, side, or up and down play. What we're looking at here is refinement again, because the spring bar is a nice tight fit in the holes in the beads of rice links, and therefore we don't have additional friction. It articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, but it's not sloppy, it's tight. Also, it does have the aesthetic of the original 1960s Skindiver because we have pierced lugs, we have holes in the flanks. That means it's easy to remove the bracelet simply by depressing a spring bar tool externally through the flanks, or alternatively you can simply use the quick release spring bars. But if you're fitting an alternative strap with standard spring bars, it's beneficial to have pierced lugs. Bracelet is finished to perfection. One detail I like about it versus Jubilee style bracelets is the centre beads of rice links are brushed satin finish rather than being mirror polished as per a Jubilee style bracelet. This gives the piece a more vintage aesthetic and also a tool watch aesthetic rather than a dress piece. I always think a Jubilee style bracelet looks like a date just, and even on the SKX007 for example, the centre links are very shiny, but this doesn't have that. The centre links, the beads of rice bracelet links, are brushed satin finished. So beautiful lustre to the outer links, beautiful lustre to the centre links, and the flanks are also longitudinally brushed satin finished. They've made the correct decision by not mirror polishing the flanks because again this gives it a vintage or tool watch aesthetic. Now usually I'd be critical of a bracelet at this price point in the mid tier, €579, using push pins versus using screw pins. This would look better and would be more functional if it had 1.2mm or 1.6mm screw pins. But however, I'm not going to be critical of it on this occasion because, as I've detailed, NSA originally made beads of rice bracelets and other bracelets for a plethora of brands in the 1960s and 1970s, such as Hoya, Doxa and HGP respectively, and they did use push pins rather than screw pins. Push pins were the industry standard in the 1960s and 1970s. They predated the use of screw pins in their bracelets. So for example on Hoya watches and also Doxa watches from the 1960s, they used push pins. So I'm not going to be critical because purist Wolbrook collectors will appreciate this NSA bracelet is true to the original NSA bracelets which were made in Switzerland in the 1960s. They did have push pins in the beads of rice bracelets. It's true to the original. So they work very well. Now, the benefit is it's not a sloppy bracelet. Articulates freely. doesn't feel stiff or kink, so it flows nicely, wraps around the wrist very comfortably without being stiff or kinking, but doesn't rattle. We don't have excess play in the push pin links, which is good. It feels nice and tight. So let's check the other side for continuity. Again, the solid end link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play in any direction, feels nice and tight. This is an example to other mid-tier microbrands of how to get it correct. Tolerances, build quality, quality control and finishing are stellar. Beautiful luster to the outer links, beautiful luster to the centre links, flawless brush satin finishing to the flanks. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks, so the bracelet doesn't feel sharp, doesn't scratch the wrist, doesn't irritate. Feels comfortable, articulates freely, feels smooth and comfortable to wear. Taper is perfection personified, 20 to 16. Let's look at the clasp. I like the long ribs, which are embossed, as you can see. Looks visually the same as the NSA bracelet used on the HGP divers, which I've previously reviewed. I like the embossed W for Wolbrook, the emblem. Flanks have 5 micro adjustment holes, which is good. Bust satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge. Doesn't have sharp corners. It's been deburred and chamfered very well. Finishing is excellent. 2 button push triggers on the flanks are correctly proportioned, heavily sprung loaded. Nice smooth action. Good attention to detail because the left-hand portion of the solid milled 316L grade stainless steel internals are engraved with the NSA emblem and also steel inox 316. So beautiful luster to the top side, underside and flanks to the brush satin finishing. No sharp edges to the top or the lower edge. It's been deburred and chamfered very well. Doesn't have sharp corners to the centre section. Let's check the hinge pins. Left-hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play, feels nice and tight. Finally, right-hand hinge pin, which is a spring bar, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Again, what we're looking at here is correct decision after correct decision. This is an example to other mid-tier microbrands of how to get build quality, quality control, finishing and tolerances correct. The 3 hinge pins, left-hand hinge pin, centre riveted hinge pin and right-hand hinge pin, which is a spring bar, are tight. This is not a sloppy, solid milled 316L grade stainless steel clasp. Articulates freely, but doesn't feel stiff or kink, and it doesn't feel sloppy. It doesn't rattle. It's not loose. Snaps shut with a nice positive click. Deploys with a nice positive click. So this is perfect. This is an example of how to get it right. Feels nice and tight. No concerns with the long-term durability or reliability of it. Let's look at the case back in detail. So as I've detailed, the Skindiver is available in a plethora of options. And on this card, they show the different case back designs used on each of the different Wolbrook models. This one uses this case back, and this is the clown triggerfish, as you can see, which is part of the Ballistodes conspilisum family of fish. And as you can see on the back, it has the proof is in the coral reef, because of course the clown triggerfish dwells in the coral reef, so it is appropriate for a Skindiver to have a clown triggerfish laser etched. So laser etching is good quality, nice contrasting black glossy finish to it. Around the circumference we have the specification of the piece, and as I've detailed, this is a limited edition of 949 numbered pieces. This is number 003 of 949, so number 3 of a limited production run of 949. Case back is flat. Now this is the benefit of this being powered by the Miyota caliber 9039 versus a thicker caliber such as the NH38. It's thinner and lower profile, and of course the benefit of this being the 9039 versus the 9015 date version is it has a lower cannon pinion hand stack height, so it's lower profile. The handset sits closer to the dial, and also the double dome box top hat crystal can sit closer to the handset and also the dial itself, because there's no risk of the white contrasting second hand fouling the underside of the double dome box top hat sapphire crystal because of the low cannon pinion stack height. So to clarify, the 9039 has a lower hand stack height than the 9015, which is also thin. This is a very thin Miyota caliber. The benefit is also a thin flat case back can be used. 200 meters of hermetic seal is strong specification, but just look how flat it is. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. You can see it's not a deep bubble back case back as per a piece powered by the NH38 or NH35A. This is the benefit of 9000 series Miyota calibers such as the 9015 and 9039 respectively. They need minimal clearance between the case back and the rotor, so this has a very flat centre section. This piece is only 12.2mm thick. Just think about that for a moment. Even though it has a boxed top hat style crystal, which adds 2mm of thickness to the thickness of the piece, it's still only 12.2. If this were powered by the NH35A or the NH38, it would be 13.5 thick plus. 12.2 is very low profile, very slender for a 200 meter water resistant piece. 12.2 is exceptional. Nice slender case, nice slender bezel. 2mm box top hat crystal gives it the aesthetic of a vintage 1960s acrylic crystal, but the flat case back reduces the thickness down to only 12.2. So low profile case back. I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report the NSA bracelet is very long. Even on my large 8-inch wrist, I can easily slide 2 fingers beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. Even I would remove 5 to 6 full links from the 6 and the 12 o'clock side to size it to my 8-inch wrist. So this is particularly suitable for wearing around a wetsuit, or alternatively if you have a large wrist of even up to 9 inches. No concerns whatsoever if you have an 8-inch plus wrist size. There are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size and up to a 9-inch wrist size. Now bear in mind, I am on the maximum position 5 of 5 micro adjustments on the clasp, so that will also adjust it. You can reduce it down from 9 inches down to 8 inches, for example, simply by using the spring bar adjustment in the micro adjustments. But 6 inches is the minimum, with all the links removed from the 6 and the 12 o'clock side, up to a maximum 9 inch, as you can see. Plenty of links in it to fit around a wetsuit or on a larger wrist. In terms of proportions, it's fantastic. Visually, it looks and feels very similar to the original 1960s Wolbrook Skindivers, such as the World Timer worn by Neil Armstrong. 38mm gives it a vintage proportion. It's got a compact lug-to-lug of 46. Now, 48mm lug-to-lug is the sweet spot. That is the perfect lug-to-lug measurement, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8. So at 46, it's 2mm below the perfect sweet spot 48 lug-to-lug. But I'm not going to be critical because this is clearly intended for collectors with a smaller 6 to 7 inch wrist because it's a 38mm head of the piece. We're not looking at a 40 or a 41. 46 is very good for a 6 to 7 inch wrist. Even on my large 8-inch wrist, the 46 looks compact, but it does fit very well. It wraps around the wrist very well, rather like a tonneau case. It doesn't sit on top of the wrist like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. Now you can see the benefit of the flat case back. Minimal gap beneath the tips of the lugs, nice curved profile to the case. Flanks have a nice curved undercut. So really does wrap around the wrist, and you can really feel that it's low profile at only 12.2. You'll know from my previous reviews that 13mm is the sweet spot, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist. 13 and below will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, so at 12.2 it's 0.8mm below the sweet spot of 13. This is very low profile, even with a boxed top hat crystal. You can see 2mm of crystal, but the bezel is low profile, the case is low profile, case back is low profile. Slender piece. Perfection personified taper, 20 to 16, enhances the comfort level and the feel-good factor. Clasp is correctly proportioned for all wrist sizes. It's not too thick, not too bulky, doesn't stick out too proud from the wrist. Curvature is good for a 6 to 7 inch wrist and a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. 5 micro adjustment holes are optimum. The ribs have a beautiful luster, like the way they catch the light. So it's correctly proportioned, vintage aesthetic, but also comfortable. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks. So bracelet looks fantastic, feels fantastic, articulates freely, and taper is fantastic. 20 to 16 is the ultimate. Head of the piece fits very well. Now, it feels very well balanced. It's 140 grams, and of course that is with a very long bracelet. Even I would remove 6 links from it. That would reduce it to circa 130. If you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you're going to be removing more links. It's going to be below 120 grams. Even with a 7 to 8 inch wrist, it's going to be circa 130 to 135. As it stands, with all the links up to 9 inches wrist size, this is still only 140 grams. It's a very lightweight piece, even though it has a solid beads of rice link bracelet. So, very lightweight piece. It feels invisible. It feels weightless on wrist. Feels very wearable and comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day as a result, because 140 feels balanced. Doesn't feel top heavy like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel, with a bulky bracelet which is too thick, with thick links, and a bulky micro adjustment clasp. The bracelet and clasp perfectly balance the 38mm head of the piece. I think they've got it perfected. 38 visually looks very similar to a 1960 Skindiver. 46 is compact. 20mm to 16 is perfection personified taper, and it is only 12.2. Fantastic. Looks good, feels good. Legibility is outstanding. AR coating works well. Handset is clearly legible. Dial is clearly legible. Bezel minute ticks are clearly legible. It's just a very well made piece. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So on the triangle, which is inlaid into the PVD coated solid stainless steel coin edge bezel, it uses BGW9. On the dial and handset, it uses C3 Superluminova. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This has exceeded my expectations. Now, I was expecting strong performance because I know that Wolbrook are the parent company of HGP, and when I've previously reviewed HGP divers, they have had stellar performance on the Lume, on the dial and hands. And this, again, has not disappointed. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 on the blue BGW9 triangle. And if you look at the dial and handset, stellar performance. Clearly a full 6 layers on the printed indices and the handset. Now, the benefit of the large triangle arrowhead hour hand and the pencil minute hand is you can immediately differentiate between the hour and the minute hand. It's fantastic. Also, we've got a Lume dot or Lume pip on the sweeping contrasting white second hand, so one can see the second hand sweeping around the dial. The exciter is potent and it's glowing brightly, and it will continue to glow for a good length of time. Now, this is the industry standard for good reason. 5 to 6 layers is the industry standard. We're looking at a full 6 layers. I'm just going to charge it up once more to get the camera to autofocus on it. You can see they have not used the cost-cutting measure that so many mid-tier microbrands use of, for example, 2 to 3 layers on the dial, or 3 to 4 layers on the handset, or the Lume pip or triangle. This is 5 to 6 on the bezel, 5 to 6 on the dial, 5 to 6 on the handset. Stellar performance. Now, subjectively, I'm going to be critical of the mismatch in Lume. Now, I'm not talking about mismatch between the dial and hands. I prefer watches just to have monochrome dials, and also the hands and the indices, I like them to be monochrome, so just white in daylight, and also the Lume pip. I don't like when we have BGW9 and C3 used on a watch. For example, I prefer this if it just had C3 for the triangle on the bezel and the dial and the hands, or alternatively BGW9 on the bezel, the dial and the hands, rather than the blue triangle and the green indices and handset. But this is subjective. For the majority of collectors, this is not going to be detrimental. I appreciate that I just prefer monochrome watches, and I prefer the Lume to be monochrome, just one colour only. But stellar performance. I think it would be better with a green triangle, but the benefits of it being blue is it contrasts very well with the bezel, and you can see it very well. So stellar performance, and it's not fading whatsoever. This is a full 6 layers on all 3 places, bezel, dial and hands, and I like the green tone of it. Perfect colour tone match between the indices and the hands. They're not mismatched, they don't look lighter or darker. So credit where credit's due. Wolbrook have done a stellar job of it. So lastly, I'll discuss the movement use because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this uses the Miyota 9039, which is made in Japan. You'll know from my previous reviews that the 9039 and the 9015, which it's based upon, are 2 of my favourite calibers. They are premium grade 9000 series Miyota calibers. So to put the 9039 into perspective, I regard it as equal quality to a Sellita SW200-1, alternatively an ETA 2824-2. That's the level of standard we're looking at, the standard grade. So 9039 is the no-date version of the 9015. The architecture of both movements is the same. Miyota simply delete the date complications, so there's no date wheel beneath the dial, and therefore that deletes the phantom date setting position. It's a lower profile version, as I've detailed. The 9039 has a lower cannon pinion hand stack height, and that reduces the thickness of the caliber, and it means you can sit the sapphire crystal closer to the handset and also the dial than using the 9015. Has 24 joules, and it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. Has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications, and the stated accuracy is -10 to +30 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. Now, Wolbrook are regulating the 9039s they're using to ±15 seconds per day. So the watches are assembled in France, and the movements are cased in France. The quality control takes place in France, and the regulation of the calibers. Although they state plus or minus 15, they're regulating the movements in 5 positions. In reality, they are attaining far better accuracy, which is nothing unusual for a 9039. This one is running consistently at plus 1 second per day accuracy when it's fully wound to its maximum 42 hours. Chronometer grade accurate. So minus 4 to plus 6 is chronometer accurate. At plus 1, it's clearly within the minus 4 to plus 6. So although they state they regulate the movements to plus or minus 15, this one is plus 1. It's fantastic. Plus 1 second per day. Stellar accuracy. So, are there any negatives to it? None whatsoever. The movement is reliable, it's well proven, it's a 9000 premium grade. There's no difference in quality between the 9015 and the 9039. The 9039 is just the no-date version of it. It's a level above the 8000 series, such as the 8215. It's a level above the NH35A and the NH38. So really I regard it as equal quality, materials, finishing and accuracy to a standard grade SW200-1 or a standard grade ETA 2824-2. Of the 3 options, I prefer the 9039 because it's low profile. The main benefit is this is only 12.2 thick, as I've detailed, even though it has a 2mm box top pack crystal, 12.2 for a 200m piece. It's fantastic. This enhances the comfort level and the feel good factor. As I've detailed, had they used the NH38, this would be 13.5 plus. That's the benefit of using the 9039. It's low profile and it has a low hand stack height on the cannon pinion. Fantastic movement, one of my personal favourites. Accurate, reliable, build quality, quality control, materials, finishing are all stellar. Correct choice at this price point. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €579 is the price point on the Beads of Rice bracelet. Yes, I'm going to declare it excellent quality, and yes, I'm going to declare it excellent value at €579. Why do I say it's excellent quality and excellent value? €579. The 9039 justifies the price point. The stellar performance of the C3 and the BGW9, 6 layers, justifies the price point. Bezel execution is fantastic. Screw down crown execution is silky smooth. Build quality, quality control, finishing, materials are all stellar. No negatives to this piece whatsoever. I like everything about it. Now, above all else, the brand heritage from 1949, made in America, through to the 1950s, made in France, through to the 1960s, Neil Armstrong wearing the iconic Skindiver World Timer. It has that brand heritage, that pedigree behind it. That adds value to it. The other thing I like about it is the watch is assembled in France. We're not looking at a watch which is made in China. So quality, Miyota 9000 premium grade movement, made in Japan, the 9039, cased in a made in France watch with an NSA bracelet, which is fantastic. So no negatives to the piece whatsoever. I like everything about this piece. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Wolbrook Skindiver automatic divers watch 38mm. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.